Evening, everybody, and welcome to the WCNC Plus Live Impact News Studio. I am Nick Carboni, Sports Director here at WCNC Charlotte. Colin will be in momentarily, but we are starting you off tonight with some sports. We've got a special soccer team in this city right now. Charlotte FC are now the winners of 8 straight MLS matches, and no match, it's hard to find a match that gets bigger than Messi and Inter Miami here this weekend at Bank of America Stadium. Calling that match for Apple TV is the legendary Steve Cangialosi. Steve, thank you for joining me, man, and welcome in advance to Charlotte. Not sure when you actually get here, but what are your impressions of just coming to Charlotte to call matches? I assume you have done so before. Sorry, I don't know that. I'm usually at the match, watching in person.
Oh, absolutely, and it will not be my first trip to Charlotte. Yeah. I've been there every year since the inaugural season, believe it or not, and it's been a wonderful experience each time around. To the importance of Saturday, if you asked me to circle 5 or 6 of the most important regular season matches in the league, I would label this as one of them, because you have one team going for history, one team that comes in with arguably the greatest player of all time, and comes in on the heels of controversy into Miami after what happened in a Leagues Cup final where they lost and to a degree embarrassed themselves in the post-game circus that followed. So this game has a lot going for it, and it's a very special team that can tie some history on Saturday night as well, Nick.
Steve, your familiarity with Charlotte FC, as you mentioned, and the history that they are going for Saturday night, they have gotten better every single year, and we'll see where this year ultimately lands for them. But given this streak, given what's on the line, just in terms of a historical perspective on Saturday night, how is this club, do you think, viewed from a national perspective, from a league perspective, and what they've done in the first couple of years?
They had my respect at the very start of the season. My preseason prediction was that Charlotte would finish second in the Eastern Conference to Cincinnati. For what that's worth, one man's opinion, of course. But the respect is tied, I think, to the hiring of Dean Smith to a large degree, and how the team has manifested itself not only over the course of the last 4 seasons, Nick, but really from opening night this year to where they are now. If you look at what this team was from the start of May 1st through June 30th, they went through a terrible spell, taking just 6 points in a possible 30 out of the 10 games they played in that span, and look at where they are now, vying for a 9th consecutive win. I've always been a believer that good things always stem from whether or not a team has its defense fortified first. And that's been a strong point of Charlotte for the longest time. They surrendered the fewest goals in the Eastern Conference last year, and I think if you look at this last stretch in particular, over the course of this 8-game winning streak, they've conceded only 4 goals in those 8 games. That speaks to how the goalkeeper, Christian Kalina, has rebounded from some tough times. It speaks to a veteran, Tim Ream, who's turning back a clock. And it speaks to a young defender like Adilson Malanda, who's rightly going to head to Europe at the conclusion of this season. They have a lot going for them in that respect. And if you get just enough scoring to complement that, and this team is going to finish with a record number of goals in its brief MLS history, that generally adds up to good things. I'll say this. I think they have the league's attention. You win that game by multiple goals on Saturday night, I think they'll have the country's attention as well.
Steve, is what Charlotte FC has been leaning on these last couple of months since this streak started, is it sustainable? Can it be trusted into October and perhaps November?
You're asking me to make a prediction on the most unpredictable league in the world. I will attempt to do my best. One of the things that Charlotte has going for it is the return of Pep Biel to the starting 11 potentially on Saturday. It's my feeling he'll certainly at least come off the bench for a good spell. You're still talking about someone who, if he's not the most important player on the team, surely he's in the top 3. He comes into this game with 22 goal contributions, despite the fact that he's been hurt for a spell. He's having a wonderful season. Had he stayed healthy, he'd be MVP timber. But to your point, I think this is a team that's coming together at the right time. Now, do I think it's the best thing to go into a playoff if they actually did stretch this thing to 13 straight wins, there are some coaches and some observers who would tell you it's better to get that one stinker out of the way before the most important games happen. But I think that's a problem they'd probably like to be able to deal with. It's a good team. I think we're going to find out in the next 2 weeks whether they truly belong in that uppermost tier in Major League Soccer. They're on the periphery of that. I'm not ready to go there yet, but ask me again on Sunday, please.
Will do. Steve Cangialosi from Apple TV calling this Saturday night's Charlotte FC Inter Miami match at Bank of America Stadium. Steve, you may be able to have Dean Smith in the booth with you if you'd want for a spell. I'm not sure if you put in that request. Suspended one match, collected a third yellow in the last match against New England. Just what is a manager in MLS allowed to do during a suspension? We've seen some different takes on that in different competitions. Dean told us today that he's going to hang out with the owner, but he did, basically intimate that he will have some tactical influence, I guess.
I saw what he said in the press conference on Thursday. I had a chat with him with our Apple TV crew a little bit after that, and either he's being coy, Nick, or he seriously does not know the answer to that question just yet. I asked him, is there a rule in MLS that prohibits electronic communication with the bench? And he told me he could not answer that definitively. It is my understanding that, yes, whether or not he's a guest of David Tepper or not, I think that's inconsequential, but clearly he will be watching. He might even have the ability to personally put together video clips that he wants the team to see at halftime and then have somebody facilitate for that in the locker room. What I know for a fact is that he is not allowed direct communication with the players and coaches. And by that I mean face-to-face communication for the lead up to the game and, of course, the actual game. But where there's a will, there's a way, and it's my understanding that he was even surprised the league asked him who the interim head coach for this game
He wouldn't give us a
be.
name, although we think it's Miles Joseph, yeah.
It probably is Miles Joseph, but according to Dean, he's still going to be calling the shots. Now, logistically, how that works out on Saturday night remains to be seen. I do not think we'll have an episode like the one we saw in League's Cup where Javier Mascherano was sent off and a few rows behind the bench, there he is communicating with a cell phone to his top assistant. That, I'm fairly certain, will not happen. But Dean Smith's fingerprints will be on what we see to some degree on Saturday night.
To speak of suspensions and discipline, how does Suarez's absence affect Inter Miami in this match?
In a big way, because in a way that Wilfred Zaha has adopted a little bit of a different game for Charlotte as their top player, Luis Suarez has adopted a little bit of a different approach for Inter Miami this year. He's not the finisher he once was, and there's no shame in that because there was a time he was once one of the greatest strikers in the world. He's become more playmaker than finisher this year. And I think that's a credit to him and how he's adopted a different approach for Inter Miami. You take him out of the lineup for this game, and clearly it hurts. Something that's compounding that, depending on how deep into the weeds you want to get here, Fafa Picault was injured for Inter Miami during the international window competing for Haiti. Now, he's someone who likely would come into the lineup for Luis Suarez, not purely as a number 9, but they could use his speed to get behind defenses, and his status for the game is in question. You're taking away the relationship with Lionel Messi. Miami does not come into this game with the preferred starting 11. That's the easiest way to answer your question. Luis Suarez, on his good day, more often than not, is the best player on the field. He would want to be out there for this game on Saturday night. To answer your question, it's a big loss for Inter Miami, who, if they lose this game, I believe their chances for a supporters' shield are greatly reduced down the stretch.
You say it's not the preferred starting 11 for Inter Miami, but they have the one player in that 11 that everybody would prefer to have on their club. Can you speak to Messi, the season he has had, and how he is still able to do what Messi does right now.
Yeah, he's a goal-a-game player. He is still performing at the highest level for club and country. In his most recent appearance for Argentina just a few days ago, he scored twice in the World Cup qualifying game for Argentina, which had already clinched, but the game was very meaningful for Venezuela, which has now been eliminated from World Cup qualifying in South America. Messi has done, I think, numerically, what I think most of us would have pegged for him at this point in the season. A lot of goals, a lot of nights where he factors into the play and factors into the end result with a minimum number of touches on the ball as well. I still think we see that Lionel Messi to some degree that was first introduced to North America a little more than 2 years ago. Someone who gets lost on the field for the opening 10 minutes or so in the game. Somebody who's not logging nearly the amount of ground as most of the other field players on any given night, but still the one that's most likely to impact the match. He's scored some magical goals this season. He can beat you on the dribble, and he's been doing that now for close to 20 years. But Nick, still at this point of his life and his career, his vision is second to none. And you talked about the absence of Luis Suarez. The relationship to watch in this game for Inter Miami is the relationship that Lionel Messi has with Jordi Alba attacking from the left-back position. Alba has had a GPS for Messi for their entire careers, whether it's been with Barcelona or in MLS with Inter Miami. If that duo is clicking, I think it represents the strongest threat to this streak coming to an end for Charlotte on Saturday.
As Patrick Agyemang left Charlotte to go to the English Championship in the middle of the summer, we did speak to sporting director Zoran Krneta, and he held back a little bit about what he thought he may have in Toklamati, but you could see in his eyes that he was excited and hopeful. What do you make of Toklamati's run these last couple of months and how it has helped Charlotte FC have this 8-match win streak?
There seems to be a calmness about his game that I think a lot of people in Charlotte and now around the league are starting to appreciate. He's a different striker from Patrick Agyemang. There's no doubt about that. When Agyemang was sold to Derby County, I didn't like the move initially because I thought there was a way for both of them to find the field for significant minutes for the balance of this season. But what we're looking at is a player with a different profile from Patrick Agyemang, right? Agyemang was a physical presence who would use that physicality, I think, to get behind the other team's last defender. We're not seeing that right now with Toklamati. It's a different kind of makeup for this striker who's on a wonderful tear right now for this team. I think it's 7 goals now in the last 12 games for him. Don't hold me to that since Agyemang's departure from this team. But I think he uses a different skill set to give you the production that he's giving you. From what I can tell and what I've seen, he's a smart player. He's a good technical player, and he uses those things to his advantage, maybe more better than Agyemang might have, even if he stayed with this team for a while. Whether or not this is something that I think makes them better in the long run, I still think there's an argument that Agyemang might have been the player for that, but they're enjoying this while it lasts. And right now I can tell you this, internally with Charlotte FC, there's no one who lacks faith in what this young man is doing at that number 9 position right now. And when BL comes back, that's the relationship as 10 and 9 that I know Charlotte wants to see manifest itself into wonderful things, and it just might.
A few more minutes here with Steve Cangialosi, who you can watch and hear on Apple TV this weekend as Charlotte FC hosts Inter Miami. Steve, what's different about calling a Lionel Messi match? It is a different experience from a spectator standpoint and even a reporter standpoint. What are the differences for you in your job?
I think the whole experience on game day is a little bit different, Nick. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Obviously, there's a security detail around Inter Miami that's a little bit different than most teams. They are very protective of Messi, who very rarely speaks to the media. He's been kind enough to do it with us at Apple TV on a handful of occasions this year. But on any given week when I'm calling a Miami game, I would have 60 questions for Lionel Messi, and I can't get any of those asked and answered. That's a story for another day. But in terms of what you're watching on the field, I think the best way I can answer that is I'm liable to see something that I've never seen before. I'm liable to see a goal that is created in a manner that in the course of 600 some odd MLS games every year, regular season, postseason, and Leagues Cup, he's liable to do something that no one else in the league is either capable of doing or even had the audacity to try. And it's a rare situation where if you have Messi, for instance, 30 yards from goal, with 3 players to beat on the dribble between the goalkeeper and where he possesses the ball, your antenna always has to be up that this is a player who might find a way to carve through all 3 and score one of the great goals that we'll see. It's a treat. It's a privilege to an extent to do these games and watch him do what he does. And I still pinch myself every now and then saying, wow, the league of choice for Lionel Messi is the one I've been associated with for the longest time.
Steve, we are quite unfamiliar with the feeling of being able to clinch a playoff berth around here in any sport about a month before the regular season ends. I believe it does hinge, obviously, the Charlotte win and a Red Bulls loss or draw at Portland. I know you're familiar, obviously, with Red Bulls, but what is your take on that match and not a prediction, but how we may be scoreboard watching Saturday night?
Well, taking care of your own business primarily is the thing. And then after that, you've got a Portland team that is coached by Phil Neville that's on its home ground. That's always a tough thing for anybody walking in there. The Red Bulls are trying to continue a streak of playoff appearances and stretch it to 16 straight years. That's the longest in the history of this league. I would say that if Charlotte gets the win in the early window of games on Saturday night, there's something of a 50-50 chance that it will clinch. I think to the bigger picture here, Nick, whether it happens Saturday night or not, Charlotte's going to the playoffs, and I'd be shocked if they don't have their highest finish, a top 4 finish, by the time decision day concludes on the 18th of October. If you're asking me how I would measure real progress for this Charlotte team this year, they have to win a playoff round for the first time. This would be the 3rd straight year that they qualify for the playoffs. In 2023, they played that 8-9 game. They lost against Red Bull. Last year, of course, knocked out in the opening round in what was a very competitive series against Orlando City. But if you're asking at the end of the season, whether or not they lift MLS Cup or not, what's the real tangible thing where you can measure there was a big step in the evolution of this club? I don't think it's necessarily how early they clinch a playoff, but whether or not they win at minimum at least a round, because they've shown they're good enough to do that, and probably more.
Going to be a fantastic night at Bank of America Stadium. Steve Cangialosi, Apple TV. He'll be on the call. Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Nick. I can't wait to get down there. Big one Saturday night.